This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with Patricia Stepler, founder of Creating Top Producers. She helps entrepreneurs and business leaders master their mindset, boost productivity, and gain both time and money freedom. Her journey began when her son manifested a full college scholarship, an experience that led her to study with Bob Proctor and dive deep into the law of attraction and universal success principles. Today, she combines decades of experience in education, leadership training, and personal development to help clients break limiting patterns, align with success, and build businesses that support the life they truly desire. Patricia, I am so happy to be speaking with you today, so welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Leslie. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, me too. Well, we're newly connected. In fact, you had reached out to me about possibly guesting on the show. And first of all, I want to say thank you for that because it was actually great timing as I had just started looking for guests for season 4. And it was just so nice to have you reach out and tell me about yourself, which again led to a coffee chat. And here we are today. So I'm really excited to get talking with you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I know your work is deeply personal, and I love that your journey into what you do now began with your son manifesting a full college scholarship. So can you take us back to that time and share how that experience opened the door for you into the world of personal development and mindset mastery?
Yes, well, I actually have been doing personal development my entire adult life, which probably helped my son because it was when he was 12, he came to me and told me I didn't need to save money for him to go to college, that he was going to get the scholarship. And I did not believe him. I thought it was a total fantasy, but I knew enough from personal development not to steal his dream. So I never told him I didn't believe in him. I let him go with it. And he kept telling me this over and over and over again, that he was getting a scholarship and he decided to be a collegiate athlete and he wanted to play baseball. And you don't really get full scholarships in baseball, but he ended up getting this academic scholarship. And so when that happened, I'm like, how did that happen? Because he was recruited to play baseball at this school, but it was an academic scholarship that he got. And I knew he had caused it, but I didn't know how because I'd never heard of the law of attraction or manifesting your dream or, turning your life into the reality that you want. And I'd heard the name Bob Proctor prior to this, but I'd never come across him in all the conferences and conventions I went to and the books and literature I had. I never came across his name or studied him. But when you're searching, you find the answers. And so I went on a journey because I had to figure out how he did it. And that's when I came across Bob. And as soon as I heard Bob talk, I was like, this man knows the answers to what I'm seeking. And so that kind of led me into that. And then I decided I just had to share this with as many people as I could.
Yeah, I love that. Was there an actual moment? I mean, I know that you said your son did something incredible, which again, I love the fact young people, and I know we were all young one time. We had this dreamer's mindset that we believed the things that we were telling ourselves, which I really love that. And I think that comes from parents and peers and adults saying, hey, you can do whatever you want. And I guess somewhere along the way, because life is lifing, that we kind of lose a little bit of that spark and that dreamer's mindset. And so I love the fact that your son said, hey, at 12 years old, he intuitively knew he was going to find a way to go to college on full scholarship, and you didn't have to worry about that, which I think is so amazing for someone so young to actually have that feeling and that knowing. And so I know that that led you to Bob Proctor and his teachings, which I love Bob. I think his work it really is amazing, is going to live on for a very long time, even though he's no longer with us. But his teachings are so powerful. So I know that you said that you were led into that world and you realized that he had that something that was really going to help you to understand it a little bit more. But was there a moment that actually helped shift you? And in that moment, how did that eventually evolve into creating top producers?
Well, it's kind of funny because the first time I went and heard Bob speak, I joined his company quickly as a consultant. But when I first heard him speak, a lot of this was so unfamiliar to me. And I thought it was a little bit, well, definitely woo-woo, like most people think. And and I thought it was a little bit out there. And yet I had this experience of my son getting this scholarship. So I knew he had attracted that to him. And so that was a little bit odd that it happened that way. And, I think just going through that, it led me to my business because I was at the time thinking, what do I do with this information? And so for a while, I took it into the school where I was teaching and utilized some of it to help the students I taught because while I thought my son was amazing to have gotten a scholarship and my other two daughters I thought were, really outstanding individuals also, I also knew that the children that I taught were outstanding. They just didn't have that support. So I tried to take some of that in and use it with the children that I worked with. And then I took it to the business world as a trainer. I worked for a company and did public speaking. And also, I would go into certain companies and train. And yet the frustration was still there because I didn't feel like a lot of the information I was able to share with that company was what they really needed. They really needed the shifts that you could get by understanding how your mind worked and the way Bob explained it. So that led me to really build my own business, creating top producers where I could help people with what mindset shifts I really felt they needed and, get into where their maybe limiting beliefs were and, go from there.
Yeah, and I love that because I know because that you're speaking my language, but we don't realize that our life journey. I mean, your son was young enough that he didn't have a lot of life journey behind him to stop him from actually having that confidence and saying, I'm going to get a scholarship. He was at that place, and obviously you'd been doing what you've been doing for quite some time. So I feel like that was also a support system for him. But I know that for a lot of us who get into personal development later on in life, which I did, I guess I was just shy of turning 55. And for me, personal development was like, oh, that is like so boring. I'm not even interested. But when I started going down that path, that self development journey of my own, and realizing, like you were talking about, how our mind works and starting to like uncover the layers, understanding that part was so important because, again, it led me into coaching. It led me into a lot of what I needed. The healing was around my emotions and understanding how that worked, like how our thoughts and our emotions work together. So I love the fact that you had that inner knowing that not only to, first of all, your son, being inspired by him, going and looking for answers, finding those answers, bringing it to the young people, that you had the ability to help shape their minds, and then realizing, let's take this out into the mainstream and helping people to learn about that. I think it's so important because we don't realize that the stuff that has happened, especially when we're older, really is influencing us still. We just think, oh, our conscious mind is doing all the work because we're consciously aware of our surroundings, but not recognizing that things can happen to trigger us, taking us right back to moments in life without realizing that we're even responding. So anyhow, I went off a little bit, but I really do love the idea, like the work that you do, because I really admire the women I've talked to who are in this sphere of self development to really help people, because it does, I believe, start with our mind, and we can either, again, like, how Henry Ford says, and I don't even know if he's the original person who said this because there's some debate over that, but it's like whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So I love that you do this work. So I just wanted, I guess it's like a roundabout long way to say that I love what you do. So,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
And everything really does start in your mind, and it's being aware, that awareness of what's going on. And, just to kind of go back to something you had said previously about, our dreams. We have these dreams when we're younger. And I think there's something that happens. I always say I kind of laugh at graduation cards that people get for high school and college and so on, because they're always encouraging you to follow your dreams, go after it, which are wonderful messages. Don't get me wrong. But I think what happens is we forget those dreams and we get so involved in the day to day monotony of what's going on. And we think, well, where are those dreams? And we look at it and say, is this all there is? That's about where I was. Is this all there is to life? Now that my children are in college or, beyond college, is that all there is? Or is there more out there for me? And, I think a lot of times when we don't get into a personal development and we don't really understand how our mind works, we can get into it and give up and say, it's it. This is all, I'm meant to be. And yet I think the excitement comes when we always have a goal and we're always going after something that's bigger than we are. And whether we reach that goal or not is not the important thing. It's who we become.
Yeah, absolutely. And just going out into life and experiencing it and not just sitting back saying, oh, like my time has passed. Because I think that happens too for a lot of people who get older. I felt like in my 50s, my early 50s, I started that question really came up for me a lot. Like, is this all there is for me in life? Because I just felt like there was more and I was not fulfilled. And so asking that question, I think really propelled me to take a second look at what personal development could do for me. And I know that also it also helps with how we identify ourselves, which leads me to my next question, because I know that you talk about how income follows identity. And I think that's something that a lot of high achievers, whether they're women, whether they're men, they don't realize that they're bumping up against that. So can you explain what that means about how income follows identity and how our self-image quietly dictates what we allow ourselves to receive in life and business?
Yeah, our self-image is the most important thing. And unfortunately, our self-image is pretty much formed by the time we're 7 or 8, and we didn't do it. And I think that's what we have to realize is that we're kind of told about who we are, not in well-meaning people, but they don't realize limitations they put on us and how we become. And so the only way we can change that and really change that identity is by making the decision to be different. So income is always going to follow, or your results even are always going to follow the image of who you think you are. And so we have to build that image. So we have to become that person first, and then the results will happen. And I think here's a story that I can relate to that I was told one time. I was talking to this lady, and she was in real estate. And she had come from an Eastern European country. And she said in her country that if you earned more than $50,000, you were probably corrupt and you were doing something that probably was not legal. And so every time, even though she was here in the United States working, every time she started to get towards that 50,000, her business would completely tank. Now, she knew that was not the case consciously, but subconsciously, that's the way she was brought up. And that was so strong inside of her that it would completely tank her business every time she started to get close to 50,000. So I, we don't always understand what is causing us to feel the way we do. But sometimes we don't feel like we deserve to have more. And that's a limiting belief that was probably planted somewhere in our conscious or our subconscious mind when we were a child. And it could have been something like, we can't afford that. Something, I was brought up in a middle income family, and there were struggles at times when my dad was very ill. And I would hear that over and over. We can't afford that. We've got to shop in this store because we can't go to the nicer stores, and it was just things like that that you get ingrained in your mind as a child, and then you have to start to overcome that as an adult when you realize that doesn't have to be who I am. And I can be somebody different, but you always have to change who you are. You have to be accepting of knowing that you deserve more and that you should, ask for more. There's nothing wrong with that. I also think sometimes religion plays a part in that, that we're told that you shouldn't be wealthy, that you should, be satisfied. Well, where did that come from? Is that really what the Bible says, or what, that is really there? Or is that some kind of story that's been told down through the generations? And even if you go back into history and you look at like kings and queens and how the land structure was set up, it was set up to keep some people very wealthy and other people very poor. So that gets ingrained in you. And some of that's just generational thoughts that are coming down genetically to you, as well as things that, people have said to you.
Yeah, I love that you brought the generational piece into it, because I truly believe that it's not only our own experiences, because we all have our own experiences and our own interpretation of our experiences, but we also have people who are passing down to us their experience and their beliefs, our parents, right? Like you said, up until 7, 8, we're absorbing, we're like sponges. That's why you hear that kids are sponges, because they're soaking everything up, because they're listening, but they're not necessarily able to like wring it out and get rid of some of the
Right.
stuff that really doesn't serve them, right? Until
Mhm.
much later in life. And sometimes they don't even know that it's still there and it's affecting them, which is why I really wanted to talk about that, because I really felt like that identity that I almost like it gets passed to us, like, this is who you are based on how you were brought up. Like, I grew up in social housing, so I always believed that, okay, I'm a poor girl living in social housing to a single mother who is different skin color than I am. So I came from a mixed ethnic background, and I didn't have a lot of money. But on the flip side, all of my friends that I gravitated to, well, it's not necessarily that I gravitated to, but all of my friends that I ended up being friends with all had two parents, lived in big homes, had money whenever they needed it or wanted it. And so there was this identity then, I believe, that I started to buy into, that I'm not one of them, right? I don't belong
Mhm.
there, but wanting that. And so I love the fact that you talk about identity, like how the income, especially like it follows identity. And I think that's why when I went out into the world and started making my own money, I didn't always make the best financial choices, but I always like had a drive to make more money by following a career path. And I got into law and started doing that and creating wealth for myself, but not necessarily being a good steward of it, if that's the best way, I guess, to say it. So that's why I wanted to ask you about that. One of the other questions I did have for you is that I know, especially even women I've talked to in business, they're operating from that survival mode, even when they're outwardly successful. Because I've talked to and seen like posts from women that talk about all of these great, amazing things. And then they're asking the question, so why do I feel this way? Like almost like, why do I feel broken? So I have a question around income, like how they make income from your perspective. So what's the the biggest internal difference? For example, someone who is making, say, 3,000 per month, like we'll just talk about monthly salary, versus someone who's consistently generating $30,000 months or more.
So I think the biggest difference is in the thought patterns. You know, when you get into thinking about money and you're talking about $30,000 incomes, a fairly high income. And I mean, some people don't make that, 30,000 in a year, and yet you're talking about a month. Well, those people think differently. And if you jump it to the next level, 100,000 a month, there's a different thought pattern. So when you think you only deserve $3,000 a month, you're on a certain vibration. And that vibration is controlling your thoughts and your thinking. To jump to 30,000 a month, you actually have to change who you are. You have to see yourself as deserving of it, because that would be an income that, maybe like in the town that I live in, most people don't make $30,000 a month. So that puts you at a higher level. So what kind of changes do you have to make internally? And then who do you have to become outside of yourself? Because a person's making $30,000 a month is probably a leader. So do you see yourself as a leader? Do you see yourself as somebody who can generate the kind of response that you would need to earn 30,000 or 100,000? And there's different thought processes and behaviors that you're going to need, and actions that you'll need for those different levels of income. But it all starts with your thinking. Do you really think you deserve it?
Yeah,
And you have to
absolutely.
start believing that you start seeing yourself. Well, what would you do with $30,000 a month? Where would you go? What car would you drive? What house would you live in? What clothes would you wear? How would you talk to people if you're making 30,000? How would you behave? How would you carry yourself? And you start to see yourself as somebody at that level. Well, what if you're making 100,000? That's $1 million a year. What kind of house would you live in now? What kind of car would you drive? What kind of things would you do? What kind of charities could you give to? I mean, there's just so many things. And you start to think about, well, what would my life look like at that level? And then you have to decide, is that the kind of life I want? Well, what would I do with that money? What kind of job or business might I have to be able to generate that kind of money? Am I willing to work that hard? And there's just all these questions you have to ask yourself. And then you have to start believing that you deserve to have it, if that's what your choice is, and then go after it and do the things you need to do in order to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I truly believe that the questions are so helpful, especially too if you have someone like yourself who's taking you through that process of asking you those questions. Sometimes it can be really hard for us to ask ourselves those questions. Actually, I've even talked to people where they find they don't even know what questions to ask. So it's so beneficial when you have someone who does this and can take you through a process to help you uncover those layers to get to the answers. Because we all, I believe, truly know we have an inner knowing. We have the answers inside of us. It's just sometimes it's hard for us to see them because, like you were saying, it's unlocking that unconscious part of us, unlocking there's like those questions go deeper and deeper and deeper and can unlock pieces and parts of us that could have been long dormant, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, right, and because really thinking about it is just to give you an idea. One of the things that I realized too was when I was in my 20s, I was a go-getter. I kind of feel like I had that your son's moment where the word no never really meant no to me. So when I was going after my career first I started as a legal assistant and then moved into paralegal work. When I first started out, the word no was just like, for me, it's like, oh, well, so what do I got to do to make it a yes? Like that's just all
Mhm.
that was driving me. So anything I wanted, I typically would get. The job I wanted, the money I wanted, I would get it. And then as life was lifing and going on, I think that's when, other stuff would happen and kind of give me would trip me up a little bit. And then I started losing that confidence, I guess. And I started to forget my process of when I was in my 20s, what I used to do and the beliefs behind that. So I truly believe in it. I think that it's not woo woo. I think people just kind of say woo woo because it sounds like, oh, you just think and you think about what you want. But if you look back at your life and you think of the things that have happened to you that have been amazing, chances are you were thinking this is what you wanted and you called it in. You just didn't realize you were doing it. So I just want to put that
Absolutely.
out there, right?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple things that you just reminded me of. The first training I ever went with to Bob Proctor with, at one point he said, and we were a whole room of consultants. I just joined his company and I had a business of my own. And he said, your first goal should be to turn your yearly income into monthly income. Well, I was also still teaching at the time. And when he said that, I thought that's not possible because I thought there's no way I can make that much teaching school. And even our superintendent doesn't make that kind of money. And then all of a sudden it hit me. You are sitting in a room where you have the opportunity to do whatever you want. But that's how strong our paradigms are in our subconscious mind to pull us right back. And the other thing you mentioned about woo woo, and you are exactly right. Every person, I guarantee you, listening to this broadcast there's been some point in their life where they have done something and they've attracted exactly what they wanted. And I looked, after I knew what my son had done, I looked back in my own life and I could see times when I attracted exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. I truly believe that. So yeah, no, I love that you shared that because I think it's so important. People, as I said, they think of it's woo woo, but it's not really woo woo. It's like reality. But I guess maybe there's that fear that, well, if I'm attracting the good stuff, am I also attracting the negative stuff? And I guess in a way, yes, like what you're focusing on, you're going to call more of that in if you can't break the cycle of that, which I think is important. And that's where I wanted to move a little bit next, because I feel like, especially, so this podcast is for women. And I feel like a lot of women, I think women in general are always constantly doing, whether they're the homemaker and they have a business or a corporate position, or they're only homemaker. And believe me, I know homemaker, like wife and mom, is a job. Okay. I never had children, but my friends, like when they tell me all the things that they do on the side of having a business or on the side of having a corporate position, it's a job. It's like a never ending job. It doesn't mean that you don't clock out. Like you don't go to like you do to a 9 to 5 and go home and you can clock out for the day. Not if you have a
Right.
family. So, right. So my question is, I know that a lot of time women can be in the constant doing, like they're always trying to like do stuff. And I know as a high achiever, many women I talk to, it's like we're always looking for the new, we're always looking for the now, we're looking for like ways to innovate and to grow and to do new things. So, my question for you is, how do you help your clients move from that hustle mentality? And it's not always a bad thing for the hustle mentality, is what I've talked to someone else about this, but when it's just like that hustle only, how do you help them move from that hustle and over efforting into systems, routines, and mindsets that actually support their energy, supports how they use their time, and helps them to call in that income that they are looking for?
Yeah, one of the first things I encourage my clients to do is to get really organized. And for some people that's easier than others. That's been something that's kind of a forte of mine, to get organized. But how can you block your day so that you're accomplishing more in less time? Because that eases up some of those other issues that you're talking about. And then you have to also decide what's really important. To me, family is so important. And so take whatever, you think of as important and make that a priority. And then allow other things to be delegated. Find somebody else that can help you. And, you stay concentrated on the things that you do best and then allow other people to do some of the tasks that maybe you don't really enjoy and don't really want to do, and, that you're not maybe as efficient at doing. But I think that helps a lot. And also just like understanding that part of getting in and being a really top producer is spending time thinking about what you're doing. In fact, I read an article the other day about some of the billionaires in the country and how they have this 5-hour rule where they spend at least an hour every day, 5 days a week, studying and how they can do things better and, reading and thinking. And that's so important. And yet we often look at that as, I don't have time for that. You need to
Mhm.
make time for that because that's really important if you're going to grow and expand your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I want to ask you about is I know that we have those limiting patterns that keep us in a mindset of, like, I guess, where success feels like it's something that we have to earn rather than something that we get to do, like we get to have. So, and they start to feel like it's, I guess, for some people that I've talked to, even myself, and long ago, I used to believe, like, after when I went through my 20s and forgot about, my mindset around, like, the no really was just a way, like, how do I flip that into a yes? I started to feel like success really, like, what does that look like? Is it even for someone, again, looking at my identity from when I was a young girl, is it for someone like myself who comes from that background? So, how do you help your clients rewire their limiting patterns so that, again, success stops feeling like something they have to earn rather than something that they can actually embody?
I think success means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And, you have to define what success means to you because for some people it is a money amount. For
Mhm.
others, early on in my life, success for me was raising 3 wonderful kids. And that was success. Success was having, teaching children and enjoying it. So I think one of the first things we have to look at is what do you really want to do? And what do you really enjoy? And allow yourself to think about it instead of allowing the world to tell you what success is. Because success may not, I know I have a coach I was working with, and success to her is to becoming a billionaire. Well, I have no desire to be a billionaire. Does that mean I'm not successful? Well, no. That's just not where I'm at in life, to want to earn that kind of money. It's just not where I want to be. I don't want that kind of responsibility. And so I think you have to really first define what success means to you and allow yourself to find out what it is that you enjoy doing. And if it seems like a struggle, then find something else. And I know even, when you were talking about this, just today I was working on this new idea that I was given and it was like so exciting to me. And it's sometimes we find things as we're going through our coaching business or whatever business we have that kind of lights our fire. Well, then go for it if it starts to light your fire. And, I think we really have to keep that excitement there. And when something's no longer exciting, you got to find something that does make you excited because we change. As we grow and our minds expand, we change. And that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with changing.
No, I think change is amazing because then that means that we get to experience so many different things that we might never have allowed ourselves to actually experience if we weren't open, like, especially being open to change. And also, sometimes things will change for you that are better than what you had even envisioned. And if you didn't allow for that, I can use your son as an example. Like you were saying, he was recruited to play baseball, but he got into that school on an academic scholarship. So there was different things about him that made that possible. He was open. It wasn't all like, "Oh, I'm only going to go if I get a sports scholarship," because
Mhm.
then that would have limited him. Or I'm only going to go if it's academic. And if I don't get the academic, then I won't be able to experience this other thing. So it's kind of like being open to things changing, but also being open to like the possibilities of, right? Like whatever that is. So final question. I know many women are building businesses, or people in general build businesses that look good on paper. And I think I talk more for women because I know myself being a woman building and looking at how we build our business. Look at it, we have it written out, it looks good on paper, we have all of the ducks in a row, but it doesn't, like you were talking about it, someone wanting to be a billionaire, it doesn't always actually reflect the life they actually want to live. But it looks good, so it's because what everyone else is saying or what everyone else is doing, and so you feel like you have to be part of that status quo. So what's a question you encourage the people that you talk to, whether they're your clients or whether they're prospective clients or just people in general that you talk to ask themselves when they're ready to build something that doesn't just make money, but also makes space for joy, peace, and purpose? And then why is that the place we have to start from if we want our success to be sustainable?
Well, I think first of all, if you're not enjoying it and you're not at peace, you're probably not going to build much of a business either, because it's going to be a struggle and you're not going to like it. And so I think you really have to first find what it is that you really want to do, not what somebody else wants you to do. And that's sometimes very difficult because we lived in this world with all this stuff coming at us all the time. And you have that pressure of, oh, I have to think this way and I have to think that way. And I got to set a goal that I heard somebody the other day just tell me, well, I felt like my goal wasn't big enough because everybody else had bigger goals. It doesn't matter. It's your goal. And, so I think we have a lot of pressure coming at us from a lot of different directions. And with social media, it's even worse because everybody can look really successful on social media and you don't know if they really are. And so I think we really have to go with what makes us feel good and what are we after? And, our goal doesn't have to be somebody else's goal. It can just be ours.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's our life.
Right.
And if we're not living our life for us, but we're living it for other people, how are we going to find that joy? How are we going to be fulfilled? Because for me, I've always, as I got into self-development and I started thinking about what my life could look like. And then for the last, since 2018, for the last 7 years, I've been realizing like with personal development, what that can do for me and how I also like, I believe that for me, learning is growing. And if I'm not learning, I'm not growing, which means I'm not living my
Absolutely.
life, I'm not experiencing. And I want to be able to look back on my lifetime and say, maybe I didn't succeed at this, or I didn't succeed at that, or I did succeed at this, or succeeded at this. I want to be able to look back and just say, you know what, I tried. Some things worked out, some things didn't, but at least I didn't stop myself from actually living my life because that would be such a regret of not getting out and living and actually enjoying what things. Life could be so beautiful if we just allow ourselves to step outside of our comfort zone, try new things, because you never know, you just might like it or you might just love something that you try for the first time and it becomes a lifelong habit. Or like whether it's painting as an example, or self-development, which became something for me. So I'm a junkie now. I like to learn different things. And so I'm always looking for ways to level up that way. You just never know unless you open yourself up to it. So yeah, I love that.
When I also think that we have to keep in mind that failure or stumbling blocks or roadblocks, whatever you want to call them, hurdles are going to get in your way. And so just because, the first thing you try doesn't succeed, doesn't mean you stop. It means you just find another way. And nobody has a straight line to success. Nobody. There's always disappointments along the way, things that didn't work out. And it's almost like, I always think it's like a guardian angel out there testing you. How badly do you want this? And if you really want it badly enough, then it'll open up another pathway for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Patricia, thank you so much for spending time with me
Thank you,
today.
Leslie.
Yeah, I love your story I love especially the powerful moment. Your son, so incredibly intuitive at such a young age, and allowing that to set you on your path to learning about what, where did he get this from? And now you're helping your clients master their mindset, helping them to boost their productivity, gaining both time and money freedom, and so that they can create success that they truly desire, which I really think is important. It's what they truly desire. And I really appreciate the way that you break down what it takes to move from survival into prosperity and how mindset, energy, and alignment come together. Really, it's just to create freedoms that we're looking for, but not just in business, but in personal life as well. I think that's the important part here too. It's not just about building a business that you love. It's also being able to enjoy your life outside of that, because people get into that work
Yes.
mode. So again, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you being here today and sharing
Thank you,
everything that
Leslie.
you know. Yeah, thank you. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Patricia directly and learn more about her work inside creating top producers, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, the way you think about yourself is the foundation of what you allow yourself to receive. When your identity aligns with the vision you hold, the action becomes easier, the results come faster, and the journey feels lighter. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Hey guys, it's your girl Yasia. I want to share some really exciting news with you. I just dropped my first ever single, Spell on You, off my upcoming debut EP, Devil's Room, on RM Records. It's simply devilicious. Check out Spell on You wherever you listen to music. Bye for now.
I never thought I'd fall in love like this. It's time to close the chapter, but I think I needed this.
Electricast. Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your host for the Candle Power Hour.
Electricast.